Well, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for coming out on a rainy, dark, and stormy Friday evening. Tears aren't necessary. It's not that scary yet. Wait till we get to the scary part. My name is Jeffrey Adams, and I am artistic director of the Icebox Radio Theater, a group from right here in International Falls. And this is Scary Sounds of Old Time Radio. Genesis of this idea, that last summer, there was a jazz expert here in town who came and just gave a talk about the history of jazz and packed the place. And I said to Rayanne, can I do that? And she said, well, sure, just give me my dog back. And then everything was fine. I'm an old-time radio buff, and I believe there is a really special relationship between old-time radio drama, actually, and the genre of horror. And because it's Halloween in a week or so, because we're in October, the spooky season, I thought it'd be a good time to talk about that. Thanks for sharing. So, a couple of housekeeping items, first of all. Two halves tonight. The first half, I'm just going to talk a little bit about the history of horror and radio in the classic era. That's roughly 1930 to 1950. And then the second half will be the deep dive, where we will sit together and listen to the entire first half of The War of the Worlds, just as folks heard it back in 1938. This is the panic broadcast. This is the story that was so realistic, it sent some people running into the streets. This is not an IBRT program. It's just my fault. If it goes bad, don't blame the board or anybody. But we are having kind of a tacit fundraiser. Gord the Pumpkin over there next to the lit up sign that says donation. Any spare change, coupons from a Piggly Wiggly in another state, whatever you like, we'd appreciate it very, very, very much. Radio drama. This is the only part I scripted because I wanted to get it right. Sometimes called theater of the imagination, because it's definitely theater. You have actors and you have a script that comes that represents a story, music, sound effects. But of course, the action does not take place on a stage or a screen. It takes place inside of your imagination. Your mind's eye decides how beautiful the heroine is, how handsome the hero. Does the villain have a mustache or walk with a limp or wear an ascot? It's all up to you, or actually part of you, your subconscious. We don't really decide how scary the monster looks in a radio play. He just appears in our mind, planted there from a well-done sound effect or an actress's scream. And from the beginning, radio drama has always had a special relationship with horror. And for my part, I believe that special relationship comes from the fact that a radio play is really very much like a campfire story. It's about as close as we can come to a dramatically rendered campfire story. The two things have a lot in common. Campfire stories are told in the dark, after the day's swimming and hiking and fun are over. So too did early radio horror series, always aired at night, some even after midnight. But instead of the fire's dim light, we have the dim light of a radio dial. And even though there's a big difference between the forest and your living room, I hope, is the difference really that important when the room is dark and all you can see are shadows? We're gathered here tonight very much like a family. The chairs are comfy, the lights are dim. There's a chill in the air outside as the rain falls. All around us, whether we know it or not, are invisible radio waves traveling at the speed of light. And some of those radio waves carry stories.
Hello. Oh, there you are. I was afraid for a moment that you had forgotten our appointment. Why, you almost scared me to death. And that won't do after all the pains I've taken to scare you. You remember me, don't you? I'm your host on behalf of the makers of Carter's Pills. And you're to be my guest tonight in the mysterious circle of the inner sanctum.
We bring you The Witch's Tale, written and produced by Alonzo Dean Cole. And now let us join old Nancy and Satan, her wise black cat.
Hannah, I'm 17-year-old I be today.
The Mummers, in the Little Theater of the Air.
And murders, too. The hermit knows of them all. Turn out your lights. Turn them out.
The Mysterious Traveler. Another journey into the realm of the strange and terrifying.
Dark fantasy.
I am the man who came back.
Now, that, of course, is just a very small sampling of some of the shows that appeared during the Golden Age, and not the best ones, I should say. We're featuring those in just a little bit. But if you would indulge me just a moment, I want to go into a little bit of the background about this special relationship between scary stories and radio drama. What it is, I'm not sure, but I'm not the only one to sort of feel this way. You might have heard of this guy at some point. Fairly famous author. And in 1981, kind of at the height of his most productive period, King wrote the book that its cover is there. It's called Danse Macabre, and it is a nonfiction work. It's sort of his doctoral thesis on horror, you could call it, where he goes into all different kinds of horror, what makes it scary, what makes different media scary, and he dedicated an entire chapter to radio, even though it was published in 1981, which was absolutely the low ebb of audio drama interest in this country. Let's see, network radio was about 21 years in the past, and the podcast boom was still 25 years or so in the future. But King, about radio, said this: the state of the visual reality changes, and the boundaries of the mental country where imagination can be fruitfully employed is in constant flux. But when the monster was made in your mind, there was no zipper down its back. It was a perfect monster. Radio avoided the open door, closed door question, I think, because radio deposited in the bank of imagination rather than making withdrawals from it. Radio made it real. What did he mean by that? Well, understand, if you're going to write a scary story, the setups are relatively easy. A couple on a date run up onto the porch of a supposedly haunted house to get out of the rain. A family on vacation in the middle of nowhere finds a gigantic footprint in the middle of the desert. These are great setups. I would love to hear how those stories played out. But every author of a horror story faces a problem. The minute you reveal the monster, the fear dissipates just a little bit. Especially in a visual medium like film, it's completely dependent on art design, on special effects. King talked about in his book a particular movie called Cat People, which is, I don't know if you're familiar with it, it's 1949, I believe, and it's basically about a woman who's a werecat. When she gets excited or angry, she turns into a panther. And there's a very famous scene where she's stalking her rival, this other woman who is the rival for her, for the man's affections, through Central Park. And you keep hearing these growls of a tiger, or of a panther, excuse me. You never see the panther. And then just at the moment when you think this panther's going to leap out, a bus pulls up, and the air brakes of the bus sound exactly like a cat hissing. And it shocks people. But from King's perspective, he said when he watched that movie on television for the first time, all he could notice was, well, that wall's made of styrofoam, and the plants are all plastic. And this doesn't look real at all, and that's the problem with visual medium. You're kind of dependent on the visuals. Not so radio. Radio, we just plant the monster. We have an actor scream, "Ah, look, the monster!" Maybe some scary music and a scary sound, and the rest is up to you. The rest is up to your imagination. And no series from the Golden Age from the Golden Age did better than one I'd like to start with tonight, and that was Lights Out.
Yeast presents Lights Out. Everybody.
It is later than you think.
Lights Out brings you stories of the supernatural and the supernormal, dramatizing the fantasies and the mysteries of the unknown. We tell you this frankly. So if you wish to avoid the excitement and tension of these imaginative plays, we urge you calmly, but sincerely, to turn off your radio now.
I absolutely love that intro. I wouldn't change a single piece of it. Well, Lights Out dates back to 1934, when it was created. My time with the light. Created at station WENR in Chicago by this jovial fellow. His name is Willis Cooper, and he reasoned at the time that every other station in Chicago was just playing records at midnight. And if you don't know, in old-time radio, live was all that mattered. Spinning records was like one step above the janitor. It was something no one wanted to be stuck doing. So he reasoned any live radio drama would be better, and he envisioned a kind of grand guignol of the radio. If you're not familiar, the Grand Guignol was a theater in Paris in the 19th century that specialized in really gory stories. A patron would pay one price, come in and see in an evening 5 or 6, 10 or 15-minute little vignettes that usually involve someone getting garroted or having them disemboweled or eaten by rats. All of this with 19th century special effects that were as gory as possible, which probably meant a lot of trips to the butcher shop to buy entrails and blood and who knows what else. Well, we didn't have to worry about that with Willis's idea. He thought a grand guignol of the radio would be just fine. It went on the air in January of 1934. Proved so popular, it was a 15-minute broadcast at midnight on Wednesdays, proved so popular that by April they expanded it to half hour, and by April of 1935, the show had gone national. NBC had picked it up, and it stayed on the national network off and on for the next 10 years. And by the time it finally went off the air in the mid-40s, had over 600 fan clubs nationwide. And in the middle of that, 1936, Cooper left for New York to seek his fortune, and he was replaced by this handsome fellow. That is Archibald Arch Obler, local weirdo in Chicago radio. He always had that hat, he always had that jacket, and a T-shirt. He loved Lights Out. He thought Cooper was an artist. He thought Cooper was the only other person in Chicago who understood that radio drama was a real art form. And he also appreciated Cooper's mastery of sound effects. He always made sure, because he really took Lights Out and made it what it was, and within 3 or 4 years was a household name all over the country. But he always made sure everyone knew, no, Cooper was the creator of Lights Out. Sound effects were very important. Subject matter is very important. And I want to play for you now a very famous episode, or part of a very famous episode from 1937. Unfortunately, we don't have the original recording. This was a reproduction that Obler did in the mid-40s for a record album. But the story, it represents Lights Out pretty well. The story is called The Dark. Very simple, very straightforward. An ambulance driver and a doctor are dispatched to an old house. They were sent there because the neighbors had heard screams and a woman laughing hysterically. The people come up the front door, the two men, they go inside. Sure enough, they find an old woman sitting in a chair, her knuckles white as she's grasping the arms, and she's laughing hysterically, completely out of her mind. So they go over to the next door, and they discover this.
Hey, Doc. The lamp. Okay. Hold it high. Yeah? Oh, Mother in heaven. On the floor. What is it? It's a man. Oh, no. It can't be. Yes, I tell you, yes, it's a man. A man. And he's been turned inside out. Inside out? Yes. See for yourself. It's a man. But the skin is the inside.
And so inspiring was this moment that 75 years later, a bunch of weirdos in Minnesota.
Because if there was a demon outside,
made this.
I'm pretty sure who he's coming for.
What was that?
I don't know. Is the front door locked?
Brittany! Brittany!
It hurts!
Brittany, what's wrong?
It hurts! Oh, it hurts!
Brittany! Brittany!
Get back. She's been turned inside out.
That was myself, Vicki Olsen, Jim Yunt, and my daughter Rachel being turned inside out. Wasn't she good? Such a sweetheart. Works in Hollywood now, you know. Big success. Thank you very much. Well, let's move on from gore to a series that I think is probably the Cadillac Rolls-Royce top drawer of all radio. And this was a series that had the best writers, the biggest movie stars. Jimmy Stewart and Cary Grant both appeared on, and Orson Welles appeared on it numerous times. The best music, the richest sponsor, and the biggest budgets. And that was, of course, a radio series called Suspense.
Roma Wines present Suspense.
This is the Man in Black, here for the Roma Wine Company of Fresno, California, to introduce this weekly half hour of Suspense.
It was a fantastic show, and we're going to take a listen to an episode that will introduce us to this guy that we're going to spend a lot of time with in the second half of the evening. That is Orson Welles, all of 23 years old, when he was a star of Broadway and radio in New York City in the late 30s. And the particular story that I want to play some sections for you now is very near and dear to my heart, because one of the reasons I am in radio drama, making audio drama now, is years ago, maybe 35 years ago, I got a hold of this sample tape from Radio Spirits, which is a company, I think they're still around. They do restorations of old radio shows and sell CDs and cassettes. And I just got the first 10 minutes of a play called The Hitchhiker. Now, The Hitchhiker was written by Lucille Fletcher, who I wish you would all dedicate that name to memory, because I feel she is one of the great American dramatists up there with Eugene O'Neill and Arthur Miller. She just happened to work in radio, so we maybe haven't heard of her as well as we should. She wrote a play that many consider the greatest radio play ever penned, and that was Sorry, Wrong Number. I almost included Sorry, Wrong Number in this talk, but it's really more of a crime story. And this is about horror and Halloween-y type things. And most Suspense episodes were crime stories, but they did delve into science fiction and to horror occasionally. And the Hitchhiker definitely qualifies. So in The Hitchhiker, Orson Welles plays a man named Ronald Adams, no relation, who is going to drive from his home in Brooklyn, New York, to California. We don't know why. We are never told. He might be a job opportunity. Maybe he's going to go to work for the movies. He says it's going to take 8 days. I'm dubious because this was 1941. This was before the interstate system, but okay, 8 days of constant driving, maybe you could make it. And he begins his trip by saying goodbye to his mother at his home in Brooklyn, who is crying. She has a premonition of doom. She doesn't want him to go. He completely blows her off, laughs her off. Oh, it's just going to be perfectly civilized driving, he says, with a hot dog or hamburger stand every 10 miles. Adams starts out, and when he gets to the Brooklyn Bridge, this happens.
I was in fine spirits. The drive ahead of me, even the loneliness, seemed like a lark. I reckoned without him. Crossing Brooklyn Bridge that morning in the rain, I saw a man leaning against the cables. He seemed to be waiting for a lift. There were spots of fresh rain on his shoulders. He was carrying a cheap overnight bag in one hand. He was thin, nondescript, with a cap pulled down over his eyes. I would have forgotten him completely, except that just an hour later, while crossing the Pulaski Skyway over the Jersey Flats, I saw him again. At least, he looked like the same person. He was standing now with one thumb pointing west. I couldn't figure out how he got there, but I thought probably one of those fast trucks had picked him up, beaten me to the Skyway, and let him off. I didn't stop for him. Then late that night, I saw him again. It's on the new Pennsylvania Turnpike between Harrisburg and Pittsburgh. It's 265 miles long with a very high speed limit. I was just slowing down for one of the tunnels when I saw him standing under an arc light by the side of the road. I'd seen quite distinctly the bag, the cap, even the spots of fresh rain spattered over his shoulders. He hallooed at me this time. Hello! Hello! Stepped on the gas like a shot.
I bet you're way ahead of me. It's true. Ronald, drives west, and every few miles he begins to see this same hitchhiker in the road. You may have heard this story. It was made into a Twilight Zone episode for television several years later. But with every sighting, Ronald Adams gets a little more nervous, a little more crazy, if you will. He doesn't know what the man's intention is until he gets all the way to just inside the Oklahoma border.
I didn't see him again. I didn't see him until late next afternoon. I stopped a car at a sleepy little junction just across the border into Oklahoma to let a train pass by. When he appeared across the tracks, leaning against a telephone pole. Perfectly airless, dry day. The red clay of Oklahoma was baking under the southwestern sun. Yet there were spots of fresh rain on his shoulders. I couldn't stand that. Without thinking, blindly, I started the car across the tracks. He didn't even look up at me. He was staring at the ground. I stepped on the gas hard, veering the wheel sharply toward him. I could hear the train in the distance now, but I didn't care. And something went wrong with the car. The train was coming closer. I could hear its bell ringing and the cry of its whistle. Still, he stood there. And now I knew that he was beckoning me to my death. Frustrated him that time. The starter worked at last. I managed to back up. When the train passed, he was gone. I was all alone in the hot, dry afternoon.
The whole experience is driving Ronald Adams mad. And he starts trying to kill the hitchhiker, swerve onto the side of the road. But whenever he gets to him, he disappears. He decides he can't be alone, so he picks up another hitchhiker, a woman, who only lasts about 5 minutes in the car because he keeps swerving onto the shoulder to try and hit this person that she cannot see. He just drives mile after mile until now the hitchhiker starts to appear to him every couple of miles, around every bend. And when he's completely exhausted, he finally has to pull off to an auto camp in Gallup, New Mexico. This next bit is probably one of the greatest pieces of radio writing I've ever heard. Now, most of us in this room are too young to know what it must have been like to make a long-distance phone call on a payphone. But Lucille Fletcher decided and had enough clout and had support of the production company to go through that process step by step. This mundane thing that any listener in 1941 would have been familiar with. And we don't skimp on the time. And with every step, the tension is upped a little tiny bit. And listen to Wells's performance here as a man who probably hasn't slept in 24, 36 hours and is really at the end of his rope. Here is the conclusion of The Hitchhiker.
Your call, please.
Long distance.
Long distance, certainly. This is long distance.
I'd like to put in a call to my home in Brooklyn, New York. I'm Ronald Adams. The number is Beechwood 20828.
Certainly, I will try to get it for you. Albuquerque, New York for Gallup. New York. Gallup, New Mexico, calling Beechwood 20828.
I'd read somewhere that love could banish demons. It's the middle of the morning. I knew Mother'd be home. I pictured her tall and white-haired in her crisp house dress, going about her tasks. Be enough, I thought, just to hear the even calmness of her voice.
Will you please deposit $3.85 for the first 3 minutes? When you have deposited $1.50, will you wait until I have collected the money? All right, deposit another $1.50. Will you please deposit the remaining 85 cents? Ready with Brooklyn. Go ahead, please.
Hello?
Mrs. Adams' residence.
Hello, Mother?
This is Mrs. Adams' residence. Who is it you wish to speak to, please?
What? Oh, who's this?
This is Mrs. Whinney.
Mrs. Whinney? I don't know any Mrs. Whinney. Is this Beechwood 208-828?
Yes?
Where's my mother? Where's Mrs. Adams?
Mrs. Adams is not at home. She's still in the hospital.
The hospital?
Yes. Who is this calling, please? Is it a member of the family?
Well, what's she in the hospital for?
She's been prostrated for 5 days. Nervous breakdown. But who is this
Nervous
calling?
breakdown? Well, my mother never was nervous.
It's all taken place since the death of her oldest son, Ronald.
Death of her oldest son, Ronald? Hey, what's this? What number is this?
This is Beechwood 20828. It's all been very sudden. He was killed just 6 days ago in an automobile accident on the Brooklyn Bridge.
Your 3 minutes are up, sir. Your 3 minutes are up, sir. Your 3 minutes are up, sir.
I love the realism, but I timed it. That was never 3 minutes. That was more like 1:20. It's a fantastic show, and Suspense is a great series to check out. But I want to move on and revisit our friend Willis, who, as you recall, founded Lights Out in Chicago, then took off to New York City, where he was very successful. He actually worked on a variety of shows, including the Mercury Theater of the Air with Orson Welles, got into screenwriting. I believe he has a screenwriting credit on one of the Frankenstein sequels, like Son of Frankenstein. But when he was in New York, he met an announcer by the name of Ernest Chappell. Now, just so you know, in those days, announcers and actors, that was not the same thing. They were in different unions, basically. And Chappell was an announcer, but Willis Cooper was so taken with his voice, he said he could build an entire show around him. The show was going to be a little different. We're a little later now. It's 1947. The war is over, and radio had grown up slightly. Some people were really interested in the artistic limitations of the form, and it wasn't just comedies and whatnot anymore. And what Cooper envisioned was a series in which this man would be the first-person narrator of every story. He would tell it directly to the audience. And it was a series that they came to call Quiet Please.
Quiet, please. Quiet, please. Broadcasting Company presents Quiet, Please, which is written and directed by Willis Cooper, and which features Ernest Chappell.
I do feel like I should point out at this point, I wanted some graphics for this presentation, but I just searched Google Images and came up with and there weren't a lot of great graphics for radio plays in the 30s. So this really doesn't represent Quiet Please at all. What do we have with Canterbury Chapel there in the background and the death on the river Styx. There wasn't really the kind of series it was. It was an anthology show. It told a lot of different kinds of stories. They had romances, they had some science fiction, some drama. But they were most famous for their horror shows. And the one I wanted to feature for you, one of my all-time favorites, is called The Thing on the Forble Board. Now, The Thing on the Forble Board is the story of Porky, a roughneck who's working on an oil derrick. And one of the things about Willis Cooper's scripts, he had this fondness for putting all this information about men and the jobs they do in the first act of the story. So I learned a lot about oil derricks listening to this show. The Forble Board is that platform about 2/3 of the way up, and it was called a Forble Board because the pipes were all a uniform length, and it took 4 pipes to reach that high. So you had a single board, a double board, a treble board, or a Forble Board. And he always includes stuff like that in these plays. Porky is, he was played by Ernest Chappell, is at this oil derrick by himself. They've apparently hit water, which meant they had to pour in concrete and seal off the hole before they could drill another hole. And the whole rest of the crew went into town, and he's left there watching things. He's called Porky, I think, because I kid you not, at one point he said his dinner was 7 pork chops and whiskey. Men were men in 1947. So he's waiting for the concrete to harden, and the geologist shows up, a man who's part of the crew. He's very eager to look at a core, which is a drill that they've sent down about a mile into the Earth's surface just to see what's there. So they walk over to check out this core, and then this happens.
What's the matter, Billy?
Hey, come here. Look here.
Well, what's it?
Look, Porky.
Where did you find that?
Now, listen, Porky, I give you my word. That was embedded in the core.
Why, it couldn't be.
I tell you it was. Look where I dug it out. Hey, you know what? That rock there comes from a mile underground. And it's been a mile underground for 1,000,000 years. And look at this.
And I did look. And what he was holding was a gold ring. And it was all carved and filigreed just like jewelry. And there wasn't any kidding about it. It was real. No, wait a minute. Hang on, I ain't done. I poked at the core of rock that looked like a kind of petrified salami or something. And then it was my turn to pretty near jump out of my pants. Because right alongside the place where Billy dug out the ring, there was a mud-covered, but very unmistakable finger. I picked it up, and it was cold, and it was heavy, and it was solid rock. At least it felt like solid rock. And I looked at Billy, and Billy looked at me. He started to rub the mud off this here stone finger. And as he rubbed it, it begun to disappear. No, he could still feel it, he said, but when the mud was gone, neither one of us could see it. And he dropped it to the derrick floor. It went clunk, and we couldn't find it anyplace. So you know what we done? Well, we took that bottle and we took and finished it, Billy and me. We finished it in one slug apiece, and it was a full pint of bathtub gin. It tasted just like so much well water to me.
My one criticism of Quiet Please is generally the music was provided by that soap opera organ, and it's usually the worst part. I don't know if you caught, he dove into How Dry I Am after they said they finished the bathtub gin. Well, not surprisingly, after finishing that much hooch, Porky falls asleep. And when he awakes, he finds that Buddy, I think it was Billy, the geologist anyway, lying next to the derrick dead. He's obviously fallen from about the height of the Forble Board. And I should mention previous to that, the geologist was a little spooked because he said he thought he saw something up on the Forble Board moving around. They could never identify it, but he thought he maybe saw something. Well, after that, the police are called, and the rest of the crew comes in, and there's a very different sort of law enforcement scene where the foreman of the oil project convinces the police not to arrest Porky, because they want to take him in to question him. They think he has something to do with the accidental death. Hey, could you just let us get this drill work started, and then you can take him to the police station and question him all you want. So the cop agrees, And Porky climbs up to the forward, and while he's there, he sees a rope that's holding two large pieces of pipe snap right in front of him, as if someone snipped it with fingers, and the pipe swings at him, and he barely gets out of the way, and it loses the rope and falls to the ground and crushes another workman to death. That's it for the crew. They're done. You've had 2 deaths in about 6 hours. They don't want to know who's next. So the story moves forward a week. The derrick has been abandoned. They never said what happened to, Porky getting arrested, but he's free, and he returns to the derrick. He's drawn there, compelled there, and then this happens. Get ready.
Then I heard a tinkle of something as it hit the ground alongside me. I looked around. There wasn't a soul in sight. But at my feet was the gold ring that Billy Grunwald and I had found in the core of rock that came from a mile underground and from 1,000,000 years ago in time. And I heard a little sound. The sound of a kid crying. And there wasn't any kid up there. And I heard it again, and it came from above my head, and I took out my revolver. I loaded it carefully. I started up the ladder to the forward. Well, there wasn't anything up there, nothing I could see. But there was a voice crying. The voice of a little kid. And then there was a movement behind the rack of drill pipes, and I saw the pipe move, and I yelled, "Come out of there, whoever you are! Come out or I'll start shooting!" And the stand-up pipe shivered, and I thought, what can it be that can handle that heavy pipe like jack straws? And then there was a crash. The whole stand-up pipe fell over, and I just got out of the way in time. And I was alone on the forward with the thing. But I couldn't see it. I felt the platform tremble under my feet again as something moved toward me. I fired 2 or 3 shots. And nothing happened. I started backwards. I knew it was following me because I could hear it meowing like a cat. My feet tripped over something. I saw it was a big can of red lead that somebody had left up there. Without thinking, I picked it up and I threw it at the sound, and it splashed. And there it was. And I wish the face of a little girl, frightened, crying with hunger and terror. Hands like a human being, and a finger missing from the left hand. And a body. Well, and I'll tell you about that. I told you how I'm scared of spiders. But I knew where it came from. It had come from the bowels of the earth, come riding up on the drill pipe as we yanked it out of the well. Come to an alien world, and was lost. It stood there dripping with red paint, blood red from head to foot like some horrible dream. And it put its hand on my arm. Its hand was stone. Living, moving stone. And it looked into my eyes and mewed like a lost kitten.
That is unlike any lost kitten I have ever heard in my life. All right, it's just a review. An invisible creature with the body of a spider, the face and hands of a little girl from the depths of the earth that is apparently made of living stone. Now, this is where the story gets weird. I mentioned Quiet Please had a unique feature in that Ernest Chappell always told the story first person, and very often, he's talking to us directly, the audience, and very often we, the audience, were somewhere in the story, personified, as it were. We were the guy next to him at a bar stool. We were the guy across the table at a diner that he was talking to. And in the case of Forbleboard, we were in his house, and he was telling us this story from the past in flashback form. It all happened 20 years earlier. And every now and again, when he's not doing a flashback during the play, he would mention, okay, I want you to meet my wife. Hey, Mike. Her name's Maxine, but she goes by Mike. Hey, Mike. Oh, well, she's back there somewhere. She's kind of hard of hearing. And I'm just going to play for you the end of Thing on the Forbleboard, which takes a turn. The first time I saw it, I never saw this coming.
20 years ago, I discovered many things about it, what it used for food, that it was deaf, that it was invisible and couldn't see people when it was invisible, that if you sprayed it with mud or paint or grease paint, makeup, then it could see people. And believe me, I didn't want to see its body. I can see that in my nightmares. But its face, I can't help wanting to see that pathetic little girl face. I'm afraid maybe I've fallen. But it's very beautiful. And when it's well made up, it's... But making it up, rubbing grease paint on a stone face that looks at you and smiles, and it makes sounds like a lost kitten yet. I can disguise the body in long dresses. She can't hear very well, and when she's hungry, I have to stay out of her way. I found out what she likes to eat, remember? No, sit still. Sit still, do. Sit still or I'll have to shoot you. I want you to meet my wife. Or rather, my wife wants to meet you. Mike. Mike. There she is. Come on in, dear.
Good luck getting that sound out of your head. For some reason, they never made this into a movie. I don't know why. But if you are interested, this was from 1947, and over the years, many artists have attempted to render exactly what Mike would look like. They're on there in Google Images. So by all means, search at your own risk. 3 great plays, The Hitchhiker, Thing on the Four-Board, and The Dark. Many, many more to come.